Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus with a review of the Souchaku Henshin X series, Battle Hopper and Acrobatter, which, as you can see, I bought for a paltry $2,200. Really good deal I got while I was in Japan, and, I'm glad that Tamashii Web is putting out their own version of this, but it's only about 40 or 50 bucks per cycle. This one, I went 4 figures, baby. This was released to go with the then somewhat new Souchaku Henshin Kamen Rider Black and Kamen Rider Black RX. And they aren't actually that bad as figures. They're pretty solid, fairly posable. They use one of the final Souchaku Henshin bodies that had a ball-jointed waist. I mean, they clearly aren't as ludicrously detailed as SH Figuarts are, but nonetheless, you gotta give them some respect for being there first. And being loaded up with diecast. However, the delivery on this toy was a little bit strange, and I think it actually ended up working at the end of the day, but let's just get this cardboard out of the way for a second with a well-placed Kingstone Flash! As you can see, you basically get a bike, chassis, and 2 different shells to put onto it. So let's dig in! Before we get going on all the different iterations that you can arrange this guy into, let's get a close-up of what the insides look like, and this is, I think, the main drawing point for still picking this up, even though the SH Figuarts versions are on the way. This chassis is bugly, organic, and delightful. I'm not even sure where some of these details were based on, like if this was based on some Ishinomori art, or if this was an original internal design, but I love it. Because it really gets across that this is actually a living organism fused with a motorcycle. And it's really well done, especially considering how almost anyone would have all this detail covered up in their display. The fact that they went so far as to sculpt the compound eyes on this little inside part, even though it's going to be covered by a completely opaque piece of plastic, is just lovely. And also this thing has, aside from having some die cast back here, it's also got some actual working spring suspension, which is also pretty cool. I mean, considering that at this point Souchaku Henshin was becoming a bit of a collector line before it metamorphed into Figuarts. I'm surprised that they went so far as to still put in a little action feature like that. And of course, those of you who like Chrome will dig the silver blingy wheel assemblies. Let's meet the first iteration of this little guy, known as Battle Hopper. Battle Hopper actually uses quite a few pieces to complete the assembly. It's more than just slapping a shell on either side of this thing. You also got to plug on a head and put 2 separate little clips at the bottom of the front axle. The end result is, in my opinion, very slick and very nicely done. The glossy paint is a way to add a little bit of a sense of pizzazz to this without upsetting its fairly dull nature, and I mean that in the effective way. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, aside from the racing stripes, it is a grasshopper that's been pasted onto a dirt bike. And I love it. The ribcage design around the internals here is one of the things that's accentuated by the amount of detail that the sculptors put into the internal chassis of this thing. And it does look fairly nice when you put the Souchaku Henshin Black onto it. I mean, this is who it was designed for originally, and I think that they make for a great pair. This is where the subtlety and simplicity of Black's design, I think, is most effective, is in how, when you put him onto Battle Hopper, you've got this dude who's a somewhat simple black design, riding the somewhat simple green motorcycle. The color combo is just so effective. But in the context of Figuarts, let's see how it turns out. Briefly borrowing a Holding Things hand from Black RX, a little bit harder to get the handlebars inside because they're pretty thick. They're meant for the Souchaku Henshin hands, which could open and close by themselves. But it is still sized quite nicely, and I think it turns out pretty well. This is the case where, as I wish I had more experience with just exactly what a toy bike and its toy rider should look like proportionally, because when the bike is too big, it still looks like it could work, because maybe it's just a huge bike. And when the bike is too small, it looks like it could work, because, hey, maybe it's just like a miniature bike the dude uses for some stunt work or something like that. So, I think it looks alright myself. And, I mean, shots on Tamashii Web have shown off ways of posing this guy on this thing that turned out quite well. If I were to haphazardly attempt one, it would be to place it on top of a Tamashii stage, and I'm not even sure if this is going to hold up very well. It's already weighing down the Tamashii stage pretty hardcore. I'm wondering what the construction of the Figuarts versions are going to be, because this thing has a big old block of metal inside its intestines, and it's crumbling the Tamashii stage. So I guess we'll see how it turns out. Yeah, this just isn't working. As you can see, though, the two really do complement each other nicely, and if you do want to avoid spending the cash on an exclusive version, and you can find the Souchaku Henshin version for cheap, even if you just have black, it definitely adds to the figure. However, if we were to evolve, converting the chassis into Acrobatter is a lot easier because there's only 3 components: the main shell and the front piece. This time, due to Acrobatter's design, the parts that clip around the front wheel are directly attached to the part that clips onto the head. Acrobatter is definitely a more lively design than Battlehopper. The 6 gigantic exhaust pipes, the brighter color scheme, and the kind of loopy things here in the front all kind of give me this impression of, you know, hey, I once was a gritty biotechnological motorcycle, but now I'm kind of happy. With his intended partner, Souchaku Henshin Black RX, there's, of course, much like with Black, an obvious connection. The sizes are all just tuned nicely to the Souchaku Henshin, and the final result is not only colorful and heroic, but also a little bit heavy because of the large amounts of die-cast in between both of these toys. So as you can see, you know, the intended partner looks great on it. I almost think that the somewhat lighter gray color scheme they went on Black RX for whatever reason actually accentuates this slightly. But how does Figuarts do? Let's take a look. Black RX is a little bit of a happy Figuarts release for this kind of thing, because he's one of the ones who comes with hands that can grip the handlebars to at least a small degree. Folks like Black himself or Agito Ground Form are left kind of haphazardly placing their palms over top of the handlebars using their splayed open hands. So Black RX is another release with that little feather in his cap. And while he's riding Acrobatter, I think he still turns out pretty well. If you think that the proportions between the two look good, then there you go. Personally, I think that they work out pretty well. I mean, I've long been a fan of having the rider be a lot smaller than the bike, but I've kind of been turned on to evening it out a little bit more, especially having watched some more of Black and Black RX, and having seen, you know, that, like, especially for a stunt bike like this, you'd need to have it a little bit smaller so that the rider can manipulate it a little bit more using his momentum. So, does this turn out really well as an accessory for Figuarts? I mean, it does turn out great as an accessory for the Souchaku Henshin. It's a little bit of a given. But for Figuarts, it's really up to you. I mean, like, this is what you're going to be getting if you've ordered the Tamashii web version of Acrobatter or Battlehopper. That is to say, I'm pretty sure this is what you're going to be getting, and if I'm wrong, I'll be very surprised. I mean, it'll have a little, you know, bit of remolding here and there, some compound eyes there, but I'm pretty sure the chassis is almost identical. Well, we'll see come March. But for now, I'm kind of assuming this is what we're going to be getting. And really, I think it actually works out pretty well. This is what I would call actually an example of just how much of a generation Figuarts didn't so much cross, but how much of a generation gap it created. A lot of Souchaku Henshin's accessory items, like the motorbikes, or even some of the monsters that were created for Agito or Kugo or Ryuki, they all look, you know, okay in scale to Figuarts. But Figuarts are still such a transcendent level of detail. Unfortunately, I'm not too sure exactly what price this Acrobatter Battlehopper set actually goes for nowadays. But if you can find one for like 30 or 40 bucks, I think it's worth picking up. Especially if you're not interested in some of the little bonuses that the Figuarts Tamashii web exclusive versions are coming with. It's a solid die-casty motorcycle toy and it does everything it needs to. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus. 2 days remain in SH Figuarts Week. So let's see how much more of the decade we can travel through in the next 48 hours.